Hi, this is Senator John Flanagan. I'm the chair of the Senate Education Committee. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the education budget, the New York State budget, and the Senate One House budget proposal. As you know, every year, the single largest important document that we work on is the New York State budget. In January, the governor comes out with his budget, he proposes, and then in concert with the Assembly and the Senate, we enact a budget with all three parties. As we've moved through the budget process this year, there's been a lot of discussion about what our priorities are, what the educational goals are from school districts, for school districts. But before I talk about straight numbers, I want to focus on a couple of basic things. Every child deserves equal opportunity and access regardless of the community they live in, what kind of income they have, what their property values are. And every parent, frankly, wants the same thing for their children. They want great opportunities. And I think in large part, every parent wants their child to be able to do better than they've done. Second, there is nothing more important than having an effective teacher in front of the classroom. One of the ways that we can ensure that is to have strict standards, strong certification, and proper funding of schools. New York State's primary obligation is the proper funding of education in the state of New York. This year, without any legislative changes, what the governor advanced is approximately $25 billion when you look at general aid to education plus STAR money. That's a lot of money, and that's something that we should never shy away from. That's something that we should talk about, something we should be proud of. And I know in reality there will be a lot of discussion that there should be more. How much more there should be will be a constant debate no matter what the year may be. So as we move into this year, the governor deserves credit for putting more money on the table. He starts by covering expense-based aids, which are reimbursable expenses for school districts that they're entitled to. That pot of money this year is approximately $280 million statewide. The governor also focuses on gap elimination adjustment, something that he inherited when he became governor, not something he created. He tries to reduce that number by approximately $323 million. That's something we embrace, that's something we support, and frankly, we want to build on it. He puts in a number of other things, some of the things that we like, other things that we don't like. And part of this process is our ongoing obligation to go out into the field, listen to the reaction to the governor's proposal, and then talk about what are our priorities after we hear from school districts and parents. So this year, more than ever before, we keep hearing from school districts that they want relief on the gap elimination adjustment. They want that more than anything else. I have resolutions, I have letters from school boards, I have letters from superintendents saying, do everything you can to help us on a gap elimination adjustment. And in reality, while it's a technical term, what it boils down to is that's operating aid for school districts. The way we touch that number, the more we can do in that area, the better off local districts are. And that has been their number one priority. Second, the governor put in $100 million for pre-K funding across the state. Pre-K is laudable, everyone likes it, but a lot of people are concerned that it's not properly funded, and it's being advanced at a time where schools are grappling with whether or not they have appropriate funding for AP, for art, for music, for phys ed, for kindergarten. So schools came back to us and said, if you're going to do anything on pre-K, you have to give us flexibility. Fast forward. The Assembly comes out with their One House budget proposal basically at the same time as the Senate. And we do have consistency, but we have fundamental differences. And I want to highlight what the Senate has attempted to do. We listened to the people in the field. We focus overwhelmingly on further reductions in the gap elimination adjustment. Now, let me parenthetically add, this was created when the Democrats were in charge of the Senate. I voted against it at its inception, and since 2011, when the Senate Republicans regained control of the Senate chamber, we have done everything conceivable. We have been more aggressive, we have been more outspoken, and a lot of people now are talking about GEA, reduction and elimination, when we've been doing it for the last couple of years. I've spoken publicly, offered resolutions at budget conference committees, passed legislation to get rid of it. So it's great to have partners at this juncture, and we certainly need people to help advocate with us, and we're going to continue to do that. So our focus has been on how do you help there. We put in $217 million directly over what the governor advanced. We added also in pre-K. So let me go back. I'll say GEA again. $217 million over the governor brings that total to $540 million. We then took the pre-K proposal, changed it, added money to it, directed more money to other portions of the state, and said you can use it with flexibility. You can use it for GEA reduction. So we had about $362 million over what the governor advocated. 323 from the governor, 362 from the Senate. That's more than twice what the governor advocated. The Assembly, which is their prerogative, took things from a different angle. They advanced more money for foundation aid, $355 million. They only added $43 million for GEA restoration. So the Senate proposal is 8 times greater than the Assembly proposal. More than double the governor and 8 times greater in terms of additional funding than the New York State Assembly. We will have a debate, we will have a negotiation, we will ultimately have a compromise, but we were out in the field, we heard from our constituents, we heard from our school districts, we heard from our school boards, and focused on what they asked for, GEA and pre-K with flexibility. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't advance a number of other things that have been part of our proposal. $20 million for teacher centers. That's something that teachers need, embrace, and they love. We put $6 million more in than the New York State Assembly. The governor cut funding to libraries. We put $8 million back, restore his $4 million cut, and add $4 million on top. That's $6 million more than the Assembly. We take a different perspective on the property tax freeze than the governor did and the Assembly, but each of the parties, the governor, the Assembly, and the Senate, all put money on the table relative to property taxes. So we have a robust proposal, and we're going to continue to have these discussions. We also put money in for special act schools, 853 schools, 4201 schools, which is critically important because these schools educate children who have significant challenges, deaf students with disabilities, children who have great difficulty maintaining enrollment in a conventional public school. These schools have been begging for money, and we have been responsive. And in fairness, so has the Assembly. They take a slightly different approach, but there are a number of things that we have advocated, and right now we are clearly in the throes of the budget process. I believe that ultimately we'll have an education package that will probably be just north of $1 billion. 2 years ago, we added $750 million. Last year, slightly less than $1 billion. My expectation is that we'll get just north of $1 billion, and I do believe there will be tremendous reflection of what the Senate has advanced. There are other issues that have been brought out. Charter schools is an issue that has been raised with much more detail than ever in the past, primarily because of actions taken by the City of New York and the new administration. The state felt obligated, and the Senate advanced proposals to basically help make sure that children don't get thrown out of school in the middle of the school year. We provide additional sources of funding, but at no cost, and I repeat, at no cost to local school districts. Communities who have charter schools right now will continue to pay tuition to those charter schools pursuant to current law. There are no additional costs on the charter provisions. There's been a lot of discussion about a tax credit. That tax credit is part of a robust package, again, of offerings regarding taxes in many ways, shapes, and forms. Manufacturing, corporate tax, and in this case, an education investment tax credit. There's a lot of discussion about this. It is a proposal that is worth $150 million, and it is split, and I repeat and underscore, split between public and non-public schools. There's a lot of talk about the fact that this is for non-public schools. That is simply untrue. This is bifurcated, half and half, $75 million for the public schools, $75 million for the non-public schools. And there are some terrific components in there. For example, if you are a teacher and you spend money on your classroom, you're entitled to up to a $200 tax credit for buying supplies. That's something that teachers have complained about for years. They are eligible. Public schools are eligible to solicit funds to get donations, which is something they've been asking for a long time, and it will help stimulate investment in education all across the state, in every sector. So those are things that are out there. That is part of the discussion that is ongoing, but I'll close essentially where I started. Our number one obligation is the proper funding of education in the state of New York. We have focused overwhelmingly, again, on GEA reduction and elimination and flexibility for schools because those are the two most important things that they asked for. And we have delivered in our proposal. I recognize that there will be some changes in the ultimate product that becomes the New York State budget. But in reality, that's the way the process works. There'll be compromise, there'll be negotiation, and I am comfortable representing that I believe a large part of what the Senate has advanced on behalf of school districts and parents and students will be in the ultimate enactment of this year's budget. Thank you.